And welcome to another edition of the Twins Wrap. Derek Hansen with you, along with the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer, with us. And you and I were just talking off the air. Man, I can really feel the anticipation for Friday in this American League Division Series between the Twins and the Yankees. I'm sure it's no different in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. At some point, the Twins will beat the Yankees and get past them in a playoff round. And who knows, maybe this is the year that'll happen. I know that it'll be a great sense of relief and accomplishment for the fans, less so for the players, because I can tell you this with absolute certainty, Derek, the players have no link nor memory nor reference point to any of the frustration that Twins fans have felt because none of them were in the organization through all that frustration 10 years ago, whatever. So it's really going to be fun to see how they respond. I think that objectively you can look at this playoff round and see a lot of different avenues where the Twins can win the series.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know how you look at this because we're all expecting, and the Yankees always seem to have long games anyway, but we're expecting high scores and 4.5 hour games. Should we believe anything else?
Well, I can predict, I think comfortably, that whoever has the first lead won't feel comfortable with that lead, regardless of how big it is, whether it's 1 run or 6 runs, because both teams can hit a lot of home runs, obviously. Yankee Stadium might be the best home run hitting park in the major leagues. So the games probably will be long, but they won't be over with until somebody gets the 27th out with the lead.
I look back at the series at Target Field where the scores were 8-6, and then the final game of that series was 10-7. And oh my goodness, I don't know if I could go through another roller coaster ride like that July 23rd game of 14-12.
Yeah, that was almost like a boxing match, and that went 15 rounds. It was an epic game. The Twins lost it, but it was just a fantastic game. And I think in defeat, that loss probably convinced the Twins every bit as much as if they'd won the game that they can play the Yankees toe to toe. This is going to be a great series. I don't see a clear favorite one way or the other. I just think it's going to be fascinating to watch, and I'm really excited that at least one playoff game will be held back here at Target Field. And if the Twins can win one of the first two, who knows? Maybe the series wouldn't even go back to New York. It's going to be fun to watch, and I echo what you said before. I'm really looking forward to getting this series started on Friday.
You mentioned that this team seems like more than any other team that I can remember, maybe going all the way back to the 2 World Championships teams, that no matter what the score is, it feels like they're never going to give up. And with that offensive prowess that they have 1-9, I don't think they're out of any game.
No, and I think within the regular season we saw a really admirable and positive trait, and that is in defeat, such as the epic Yankee loss, or a game where they just didn't play well and just looked awful on the field, they bounce right back, and that's really going to come in handy if they can do that in the postseason, because you might have a frustrating loss in game one, and I given what we saw during the regular season, that won't matter come first pitch of game two.
It's a little worrisome about Luis Arraez. What an unfortunate thing to happen here at the end of the season, and he's been such a key part of this team. I don't know what this opens up as far as the postseason roster, but I'm sure they're kind of keeping it close to the vest on what exactly is going on with him.
Right. I know yesterday and again today and tomorrow and Thursday they're going to be doing a lot of therapy work with Luis, trying to get that ankle healed well enough for him to play. It was a shame. There wasn't anything anyone could do about it. It's just one of those things that happens on a baseball field. But he brings so much energy to this lineup and so much fearlessness, if you will. If he can't play, they will miss that. However, let's not forget that if Luis Arraez was going to be in the lineup, Jonathan Scope would not be in the lineup. And Jonathan's been a pretty productive hitter for the Twins too. He's a different type of player, but he's a guy who's been in the postseason before too. So we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. The roster doesn't have to be submitted until Friday morning, and the Twins will use every bit of that time to see whether Arise can, play at all in the series. The hope, of course, is that he could play Friday. But if the decision is made that not Friday but then Saturday, then they would add him to the roster and simply not play him on Friday.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I was thinking about that too quite a bit, and I don't know. I don't have the analytics of it all, but if there is any silver lining here, having Jonathan Scope, and just have a bunch of power hitters in this lineup against the Yankees, if you have to match them bat for bat, may not be the worst thing in the world.
Well, remember how good this lineup was in April and May when Luis Arraez largely wasn't a part of it. Well, that's the type of lineup the Twins may put out there. The bigger concern probably is Kepler and Gonzalez, whether they're going to be able to go. The great expectation was that they would be able to go and be ready to go, and this team will be fairly intact, as much as any team is intact this time of year. And it could very well be, if Luis Arraez can't play in the first round. One of the scenarios is, well, Jonathan Scope can get some big hits and get this team past the Yankees into the second round, and then maybe Arise could be activated.
It's interesting too, because within that you kind of have to, one of the bubble guys, but he can play anywhere, including catcher, is crowd favorite Nostadillo. I mean, does he make the roster for sure?
Yeah, I don't think for sure. Disappointing things about Arise potentially not being eligible to play is the flexibility he gave Rocco Baldelli. Now, you'd like to think come playoff time that infielders would stay in the infield, outfielders would stay in the outfield, and all that. But you do have to cover yourself. You have to set up a roster that protects you in the event somebody gets hurt within a game. Now, if somebody gets hit by a pitch, breaks a finger, you have to get through that game. But then you can, make a move after that game for an injured player. But what Arise did was he allowed the Twins some flexibility because he could play at second, he could play at third, he could play, if necessary, in the outfield. And so if he cannot play, then you're looking at, okay, well, we got to protect ourselves in the outfield. So who's going to best be that person? Is it going to be Astudillo? Well, I don't know. Probably not. But it might mean, Lamont Wade Jr. would find himself with a spot on the playoff roster because they simply need to protect, the positions out there in the outfield.
Let's talk a little bit about the pitching here, because I think for a lot of people, we know that the bullpen, they're going to have a lot of guys out there for them, and they might have to even have a bullpen game. But are they going to have to carry 13 pitchers? I mean, how's this going to go?
Yeah, see, again, I don't know. I fully expect the Twins to have at least one bullpen game in the first 4 games. And it potentially could even be the first game. Wouldn't that upset the apple cart if the Twins threw a bullpen game at the Yankees right away in game 1 and then came back with Odorizzi or Barrios? I don't know. They're not going to tip their hands, certainly. But, the one thing that Twins fans need to remember as they get ready to watch these intense games, particularly at Yankee Stadium, you've got to have pitchers who will throw the ball over. Sometimes the edges of the strike zone get rounded a little bit at Yankee Stadium. Kyle Gibson is often a nibbler, so too Martin Perez. And while I'm not suggesting that they're not going to make the playoff roster, you've got to have the Cody Stashaks and the Randy Dobniks of the world who are simply going to throw it over and accept whatever fate, because sometimes weird things happen at Yankee Stadium with that strike zone.
It's maybe the reason I have to listen to these games, because when that strike zone gets tight, and you and I have talked about this before, it drives me nuts watching it. And it's like you said, it can even get smaller in that stadium with that crowd around those umpires.
Well, we've spent a lot of time over the last few years, at least I have, advocating the electronic strike zone and all that. And now it's playoff time, and it's not just the Twins-Yankees series, but the strike zone is going to be so important for these teams hoping to move forward. Every at-bat is so important, As you know, there's a huge difference if a hitter's up there and the count is 2-1 as opposed to 1-2. And so let's keep an eye on the strike zones and the hope that, at least in the Twin series, that it's a strike zone of integrity, fairness, and all of that. Because if the Twins don't throw it over the plate, or if there are walks, you just can't walk people in that ballpark against that lineup. And so whoever's going to be out there for the Twins, Barrios, Odorizzi, so on and so forth, they're going to have to throw it over the plate.
You mentioned two guys I want to touch on because I think there is, a lot of thoughts with Twins fans knowing that they may have to have a bullpen game. And a lot of these guys are going to have to pitch 1 or 2 innings, maybe not much more, maybe a third. But, Kyle Gibson has struggled. Martin Perez has struggled. It's not inconceivable to think that they might be watching, from the bench or, at home. It's kind of weird to think that.
Yeah, I don't know, if it comes down to Martin Perez or Devin Smeltzer, who would you pick?
Oh.
Martin Perez is forever around the strike zone, and but has a hard time staying in there. Smeltzer, doesn't have Martin's stuff, but he throws it over the plate. So these are decisions that are going to be made here, and I think I think we're going to be surprised when we see the 25-man roster when it's revealed on Friday.
It's funny you mention that because let's say they do get by the Yankees. It's not inconceivable. We've seen it many times. This roster could look really different going into the American League Championship Series if they can't win 3 games against the Yankees.
Absolutely, and it depends on who they'd face. Now, if it's Houston, you're going to have to try to outpitch them. That's just the way it's going to be. And how you do that, I don't know. But that's one thing that fans need to be reminded. If the Twins do get by the first round, they can change the roster. And that regularly happens. And if you think, well, maybe there's, a chance we can steal some bases or something, then maybe you add or keep a Lamont Wade Jr., somebody who can run a little bit, rather than somebody who, maybe isn't as speedy out on the bases. So, yeah, it's fascinating. It's really a tough time for the people in charge of making the decisions because your season, your postseason, and to a larger extent, your season may depend on the 25 guys you pick for the playoff roster.
Yeah, no question. And, as far as analyzing the opponent here, the Yankees, they are what they are, right? I mean, not much has changed. Outside of they don't have the consistent starting pitcher. They're just going to bash you, and, they're going to make it a long 27 outs for you.
They're going to try to make it a long 27 outs, but they're going to try to shorten the game, if that makes any sense. Now, the one thing Twins fans should be encouraged by when we had that series with the Yankees here at Target Field, and frankly, both bullpens struggled. The Twins bullpen has taken off from that point forward and now is a match for the perceived excellence of the Yankee bullpen. I think what we've seen over the last month and a half, 2 months, should encourage Twins fans to believe that the game can be shortened the other way, too. That if the Twins were to have a lead after 5-6 innings, that they've got a lockdown bullpen that can shut the Yankee lineup down in the late innings like the Yankee bullpen is constructed. So we'll have to wait and see how that happens. The challenge, of course, is to get that early lead like they did in the wild card game a couple of years ago, but maintain it through the middle innings and then turn it over to what has been a really, really good bullpen.
Yeah, you're right, because they may win this series on the backs of, we know Taylor Rogers, but, Romo and May and Duffy and all those guys are it, right?
And another guy that doesn't get the publicity he should, and it's our fault, I guess, since we're, broadcasters, we try, but Zach Littell has just been outstanding. He wasn't prominently thought of at the start of the year, but what he's done since he's come in has really been amazing. So you've got another arm out there in the bullpen, and he, like the other guys I mentioned, throws strikes. He throws it over, and they're not just strikes, they're quality strikes. And so we'll see how big of a role Littell and the bullpen play, and what the Twins hope is the cathartic playoff win over the Yankees in a series Wouldn't that be something if they could pull that off this year?
Yeah, no question. I'm still frustrated over the long seventh inning stretch with Brad Radke many years ago. But there is a little history here. Yankee fans probably don't think of it as much as we do, but it's been really a struggle. But you think about some of those teams, and I go back to Roger Clemens. I stood next to him at the Metro. I thought, man, you're huge. And then you find out about all the other stuff. There's some frustration that goes along with that. But boy, since the turn of the century, there's been some weird series that have gone on here. Not to mention the foul ball from Joe Mauer.
Right, and then you have to remember that the Twins actually have done pretty well in games one of the playoff series. They won a couple at Yankee Stadium. Problem hasn't been winning at Yankee Stadium. It's been beating the Yankees in a playoff game at home. But I can promise you this, Derek, I'm going to be involved with Fox Sports North's pre and post game coverage, and I'm not going to reference. I'm going to try very hard not to reference anything that's happened in the past, because in reality, it really truly isn't going to matter. Nelson Cruz was not a part of the frustration Twins fans felt. The fans can feel it, but I can promise you that the players are either ignorant or oblivious to the frustration that the Twins have felt against the Yankees. This is going to be a new series. It's going to start on Friday, and whatever happens on Friday will lead into Saturday, but certainly nothing that happened back in 2004.
Can't wait for it. I know you're excited. The fans around the region are excited. The Homer Hankies are back. I mean, it's going to be a really fun atmosphere this week.
Well, let's hope that the Twins can have that win in the first round and extend the postseason. It's been such a fun regular season. I think everybody in Twins territory would like to see it be extended a while into October.
For sure. Dick, thanks so much for your time again. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
You got it.
Dick Bremer, the Twins wrap here each and every Tuesday until we wrap up the season, which is hopefully not until November with the Twins in the postseason. And again, it's brought to you by our good friends at Jefferson Lines, serving North Dakota and the upper Midwest for over 100 years. Again, Twins baseball coming up. 5 o'clock is the network pregame show. About 6:07 is the first pitch from Yankee Stadium right here on the mighty 790 KFGO. More Couch Potato Radio with me, Derek Hansen, coming up.